What if a single act of kindness during the busiest hour ends up changing your life forever? The sound of shattered glass rang out like a gunshot, signaling the silent storm rising beneath Clara Jensen's mask of resilience. In the soft golden light of reverie, a restaurant hailed as the urban middle class's culinary heaven. Clara crouched down swiftly to gather the shards, her hands trembling slightly from a mix of fatigue and humiliation. From across the dining room, the manager's voice cut through the air. Derek Malone, cold and sharp as a razor. "That's your third glass this month, Jensen. It's coming out of your paycheck. Don't bother explaining." A few guests turned to look. Others averted their eyes as if her shame might spill onto them. At 28, Clara's face was gaunt, but her eyes still carried a stubborn glint. She simply nodded, wiped her hands, and returned to the service station without saying a word. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not now. Not when her mother, Eleanor, had just been switched to a more expensive treatment, no longer covered by insurance. Clara had once been a second-year medical student at one of Illinois' top universities, leading her class in pediatrics, praised by professors for her uncanny empathy, rare even among future doctors. But everything ended in a single night, the night Eleanor collapsed on the bathroom floor from an uncontrollable seizure. The diagnosis was progressive multiple sclerosis. Faced with the choice of continuing school or caring for her mother, Clara didn't hesitate. She withdrew from the university, sold her tablet and watch, moved into a smaller apartment, and took a job as a waitress at Reverie, a place with enough shifts to cover rent, medicine, water bills, and the occasional watery dinner. Derek, the manager, knew all of this, and he exploited it like an invisible currency. Clara never complained, never missed a shift, never said no when asked to cover for Jessica. She's having boyfriend troubles. Jessica, 8 years younger, prettier, and skilled at flashing Derek a smile. It was Jessica who had whispered that morning, "I saw Derek quietly changing the schedule last night on the system. Looks like you lost 3 dinner shifts." Clara had asked her to explain, but Jessica only shrugged, pulled out her phone to text someone, and walked off with a steaming cappuccino in hand. That afternoon, the new schedule was posted on the staff board. Clara stared at her name. From 7 shifts a week, she now had only 3, all during the slow lunch hours. She swallowed the lump rising in her throat and headed straight for Derek's tiny office, where the cheap air freshener clashed with vape smoke in a nauseating cloud. "Derek," she said calmly, "I've lost most of my shifts. Could this be a mistake?" He didn't even look up from his computer. "Not a mistake. Jessica needs more hours to pay rent. You have your mom, remember?" That sentence, casually cruel, landed like a second slap. Clara pressed her lips together. "Jessica still lives with her parents and just told me last week she's saving up for Cancun." Derek smirked, his tone indifferent. "Not my concern. The schedule is final." Clara walked out, her hand tightening around the paper schedule as if she could crush it into dust. She knew exactly what it meant. Next week there wouldn't be enough for medication, and without it, her mother wouldn't even be able to stand. But in that very moment, tangled in frustration and despair, Clara had no way of knowing that later that night, a stranger would walk into the restaurant and pull her out of the cycle she thought would never end. At exactly 6:15 p.m., the atmosphere inside Reverie thickened with the clatter of cutlery against porcelain, the hum of conversations rising like steam from the bustling kitchen. Clara had just finished pouring coffee at table 9 when the bell above the door chimed, signaling new guests. A father and daughter stepped inside. The man dressed in a crisp navy suit with polished leather shoes, the girl beside him in a motorized wheelchair, her face nearly hidden behind long, honey-colored hair. Clara could feel the stares from her co-workers, those uneasy glances laced with pity, discomfort, even avoidance. She knew exactly what would happen next. No one wanted to take a table with a disabled guest. Too complicated, too slow, too hard to please. And just as she expected, the other servers quietly turned away, suddenly absorbed in their phones or busy with their sections. Clara said nothing. She adjusted her apron, grabbed 2 menus, and walked straight toward table 14, where the father was helping his daughter settle into position. "Good evening. My name's Clara. I'll be taking care of you tonight. May I bring you some water and a strawberry juice for the young lady?" The simple sentence made the man look up, surprise flickering in his gray eyes, before he offered a soft smile and a nod. "I'm Nolan, and this is Lily." The girl didn't look up, only tightened her grip on the armrest of her chair, her shoulders rigid. Clara didn't rush. She crouched down to Lily's eye level, lowering her voice gently. "Lily, do you like mac and cheese? Our kitchen makes it with 3 kinds of cheese and a crunchy breadcrumb topping. It's really good." A pause. Then the sad blue eyes lifted, just enough to meet Clara's. A small nod, hesitant but real. Clara smiled softly, jotted down the order, and turned back toward the kitchen. She could feel eyes on her. Turning slightly, she caught Nolan watching her with a quiet gaze. Not the aloof look of a wealthy customer, but the silent gratitude of a father who had run out of options. When Clara returned with their drinks, she noticed Lily flinch slightly at the sound of a dropped knife or a lighter flicking on. Sound sensitivity, a common response after neural trauma. Clara moved more slowly now, positioning herself to block the main walkway, subtly dampening the noise without explanation. She placed the juice gently in front of Lily, the straw already tilted toward her, then laid down the utensils and dinner plates with the precision of someone who understood that small details mattered. Nolan set down his silverware. "You studied medicine, didn't you?" Clara startled, then nodded faintly. "I did. Used to. Now I work here." He looked like he wanted to say more, but only smiled quietly. When Lily struggled with the fork in her weakened right hand, Clara returned, sat across from her, and asked, "Want me to show you a way to hold it so your hand won't get tired?" Lily hesitated, then nodded again. "Your arm is strong, and your brain is smart," Clara said gently, guiding Lily's wrist with practiced ease. Sometimes the message between them just takes a detour. Lily's eyes sparked with curiosity, and Nolan turned his face away. But Clara noticed the red forming around the bridge of his nose. "Were you a doctor?" Lily asked in a whisper. Clara smiled. "Almost. But sometimes we have to choose the people we love over the dreams we chase." "I had an accident," Lily said suddenly, "so now I can't walk, but I can still draw with my left hand." Clara's eyes lit up. "That's incredible. Plenty of people with 2 hands can't draw at all." A tiny giggle escaped Lily's lips, light as air, but enough to make nearby diners glance over and smile. Nolan leaned in and murmured, "Thank you." But what Clara didn't know was that his gratitude wasn't just for a meal, it was for something far greater. For a change she had just set in motion. Clara had just finished helping Lily with the last bite of mac and cheese before quickly excusing herself to check on the other tables. She knew she had spent too much time at one table, but each time Lily's eyes lit up a little more, it became harder to walk away. As she made her way back to the counter, Clara spotted Derek standing by the bar, arms crossed, his cold gaze locked directly on her. He didn't need to speak. Clara already knew what was coming. After seeing Nolan and Lily out, Nolan pressing a neatly folded bill into her hand with a quiet thank you, saying, "You did something no one else has managed in the last 18 months. Clara returned just as Derek gave her a sharp signal. "Manager's office. Now." His voice was dry and flat. The cramped office, lit by harsh fluorescent light against dull grey walls, felt more like an interrogation room than a workplace. "Sit," Derek ordered, though he didn't wait for her to comply. He tapped a pen against the desk, voice tense. "Do you know what you just did?" Clara answered quietly. "I was helping a special customer. The little girl needed—" "A special customer?" he cut in, raising an eyebrow like she'd just said something ridiculous. "You're a server, Jensen, not a nurse. This is a restaurant, not a hospital." Clara clenched her fists. "I still covered my whole section." "And left the rest for Jessica to handle?" he scoffed, pulling out an envelope. "Here's your share of tonight's tips, adjusted for the time Jessica had to cover for you." Clara took the envelope. It felt strangely light. She knew she had served over 40 tables that night. The amount she was feeling in her hand should have been at least 3 times more. "You're also being cut from next week's schedule. 2 shifts, 1 lunch, 1 dinner. The schedule's final." Derek turned his back, making it clear he didn't want to hear anything else. "You know my mother's sick," Clara said, still trying to stay calm. "But you're punishing me for being kind to a child." "No, I'm punishing you for breaking protocol." Jessica smiles, moves fast, and doesn't turn the restaurant into some emotional theater. Clara stood there, silent. Being insulted was nothing new. But this time, something cracked inside her. Not tears, but a cold realization. No matter how well she did, people like Derek would always find a reason to push her down. She walked out of the office, pulled out the keys to her beat-up Honda, and fled to the parking lot like she was escaping. In the darkness, she opened the envelope. $43 for 10 hours of work. Her eyes blurred, not from the amount, but from the knowledge that tomorrow she wouldn't have enough to buy her mother's medication. When she got home to the small apartment, the dim light from the hallway slipped through the crack under the bedroom door, where her mother Eleanor was asleep. On the table sat the empty pill organizer, the new prescription still unfilled. Clara knew the message was still in her inbox. "Your new prescription is ready. Post-insurance, price, $800. She collapsed into the chair and opened her laptop, more out of habit than hope, only to see an unread notification. It was an email from her former professor, Dr. Redding, the one who had once called her clinical intuition in the body of a second-year student. He wrote about a special scholarship program for students with extraordinary circumstances, covering full tuition and living expenses. If you see this in time, I've saved the last spot for you. The email had been sent 3 weeks ago. The deadline? Yesterday. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she drafted a request for an extension, deleted it, then wrote again and finally sent it. All she asked was, "I may not be ready yet, but please don't erase my name." As she closed her laptop, her phone buzzed. A message from Mrs. Chin, the elderly neighbor who often helped care for her mother when she was working. "Your mom ate well today. No seizures. I left chicken soup in the fridge. Get some sleep." Clara cried. Not loudly, just silent tears tracing their way down her exhausted face. In that moment, she had no idea that just hours later, a letter would arrive. One that would change forever the path she thought she had lost. The knock at the door came at 6 a.m., cutting through the thin morning mist that clung to the aging apartment complex and jolting Clara awake. She had never had visitors this early. Her eyes still heavy from a sleepless night, she walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. A delivery man stood outside, holding a thick, cream-colored envelope. "Clara Jensen?" he asked as she cracked the door open. "Signature required." She signed, then took the envelope cautiously. The paper was heavy, the faint scent of expensive ink lingered, and the embossed lettering at the top read, "N.P. Holdings, Central Office, Chicago Loop." Inside was a business card and a handwritten letter on fine stationery. Clara glanced at the card and froze. Nolan Price, Chief Executive Officer. Reverie Dining Group. A short line printed beneath. Reverie is one of them. Her heart pounded. She unfolded the letter. The handwriting was firm yet precise. "Clara, your kindness, calm presence, and sensitivity last night moved me deeply, both as a father and a leader. I did not reveal who I was at the restaurant, but you left an impression not only on my daughter, but on me as well. I would like to meet you today. A car will arrive at 9 a.m. If you choose not to come, I will understand. But Lily won't. She wants to see the cheerful nurse again." Clara's hands trembled as she held the envelope. Just then, Eleanor called softly from the bedroom. Clara rushed in, helped her mother sit up, and gave her the morning dose. The last few pills left in the bottle. Once Eleanor was resting again, Clara returned to her room and stood before the closet. She owned only one professional outfit, a navy blue blazer from her old med school interview days. It was snug at the shoulders now, but still looked respectable. At 8:50, a sleek black car pulled up outside the apartment building. A woman in a driver's uniform stepped out and opened the door for her. "Good morning, Miss Jensen. Please, come with me." Without another word, the car slipped into motion, gliding silently beneath tree-lined boulevards. Once downtown, it turned into the underground garage of a towering glass structure labeled Price Tower. Clara stepped into a private elevator activated by keycard. As it rose, she stared at the glowing numbers ticking upward toward floor 40, her palms damp with sweat. When the doors opened, a bright space unfolded before her. White stone floors, high ceilings, and glass walls offering sweeping views of the city. A young man stood as she entered. "Miss Jensen, please this way to the main conference room. Second door on the right." Clara nodded and approached the partially open door. But instead of a cold, formal meeting room, what she saw took her breath away. Lily sat at a small table mid-breakfast, surrounded by croissants, fresh fruit, and a porcelain teapot. The moment she spotted Clara, Lily beamed, eyes shining. "You really came!" Clara smiled in surprise. "I was afraid I'd be late, but I'm so glad I made it." Lily pointed to the empty chair across from her. "Dad said I could start eating. Grown-ups forget breakfast all the time." Clara sat, touched by the girl's natural warmth. "How did you even know where I live?" Lily shrugged. "Dad says information is gold." But he was nervous. He stayed on the phone really late last night. Clara was about to ask more when the door opened. Nolan entered, not the quiet man from the restaurant, but a commanding businessman in a dark grey suit with sharp features and a firm stride. Yet the moment he saw Lily, his expression softened. "Hosting the breakfast party already?" "I handled the tea," Lily replied, handing Clara a raspberry pastry. Nolan turned to Clara, his voice calm and warm. "I'm sorry to keep you waiting. There was an urgent issue at the restaurant involving your manager." Clara stiffened. "What happened?" "We'll get to that in a moment. But first, Lily, would you go with Miss Angela to look at the city models? I need to speak with Clara for a bit." Lily looked at her father, then at Clara, slightly hesitant. "Are you going to offer her a job?" Clara's eyebrows rose in surprise. Nolan sighed, patting his daughter's head. "You're terrible at keeping secrets." Lily grinned mischievously and left the room with another woman. As the door closed behind them, Nolan returned to his serious tone. "Clara, last night I wasn't just a father out to dinner. I'm the owner of Reverie, and what I witnessed last night left me no choice but to act." Clara could feel the air shift. Her instincts told her this morning was not just a thank you. It was the beginning of a truth about to be revealed, one that might change her life all over again. Nolan pulled a thick folder from his leather briefcase and slid it across the table toward Clara. On the cover was the logo of Reverie Dining Group and a bold title, "Internal Report, East Chicago Branch." Clara opened it and skimmed the first few pages, then froze. Financial statements, weekly tip distribution logs, staff rosters, internal emails, and then a page with her name, her own employee file, marked with a note. "Low performance, needs attitude monitoring. This is the result of an internal audit conducted after last night," Nolan said, his voice not loud, but each word landing like a nail driven into place. "After I left the restaurant, I ordered our audit team to work through the night. What we uncovered was a system of tip manipulation that's been going on for at least 4 months. Clara clenched her fists. Derek Malone, Nolan nodded. "He adjusted tip shares, tampered with work hours, and deliberately favored certain employees. Jessica, for example. You've been the most impacted." Clara said nothing. Her lips pressed tight, spine straight, despite the storm pounding in her chest. She had suspected it, but never had proof. Now the proof lay before her, delivered by the founder himself. "It doesn't stop there," Nolan continued. "He fabricated claims about you, labeled you as unprofessional to justify cutting your shifts. And one more thing." He gently lifted the next page. A printed transcript of a recorded conversation. Clara read the first lines and felt a chill run down her back. It was a discussion between Derek and Jessica, planning to spread a false story that Clara had dropped food because she was mentally unstable from caring for a sick relative too long. "I can't believe this," Clara whispered. "I can," Nolan replied coldly. "Unfortunately, I can." The door burst open. A figure stormed in, breath ragged, face flushed with fury. It was Derek. "You set me up," he shouted. "Sent in fake guests to record me, film me. Even that crippled girl was part of your scheme?" Nolan rose from his chair. He wasn't physically imposing, but his presence filled the room. His voice was low, slow, and suffocating with power. "What did you just call my daughter?" Derek froze. Sweat beaded on his forehead. I didn't mean..." "You called her a crippled girl," Nolan repeated, each word hitting the air like a hammer. "And this woman here, the one you demeaned for months, did what doctors, therapists, and specialists couldn't. She made Lily laugh. She made her talk. She made her want to draw again." Derek stood frozen, his face drained of color. Nolan raised his hand. A security officer appeared behind him, as if he had been waiting all along. "Derek Malone, as of this moment, You are no longer employed by any establishment under the Reverie Group. Your keys, access card, and all credentials will be revoked immediately." Derek lunged as if to argue, but Nolan added one more sentence. "Think carefully before suing. We've recorded enough." As Derek was escorted out, Clara remained seated, her emotions swirling between shock and relief. Nolan sat back down, his gaze softer now, yet still serious. "Now let's talk about you, Clara. Or should I say, medical student Clara Jensen, former lead researcher in pediatric neurorehabilitation at Monroe University." Clara looked up, stunned. "How did you know?" "I have a very capable team. But more importantly, you don't carry yourself like a typical restaurant server. The way you observed Lily, read her neurological cues, responded with such precision, that's not coincidence." Nolan quietly slid a second folder toward her. "Here are 3 job offers. You're free to choose one, or reject them all." Clara picked up the folder, her hand trembling slightly. For the first time in years, what lay before her wasn't an unpaid bill or a butchered work schedule. It was a choice. And what awaited her beyond this moment would go far beyond anything she had ever dared to dream. Clara flipped open the folder, her heart racing as if each page were a backward beat of her past, but this time not to retreat, rather to return forward. 3 offers. The first was an operations manager position at a Reverie branch with triple her current salary, comprehensive insurance including in-home care for dependents. The second was a medical coordinator role for Price Group's community program, allowing her to apply her medical knowledge in underserved areas with even higher pay and, most importantly, deep purpose. The third. Clara held her breath. It was a readmission letter from Monroe Medical School, bearing Dr. Redding's fresh signature, offering a full scholarship, living stipend, and a flexible academic schedule for students with caregiving responsibilities. Attached was a lease contract for a serviced apartment right next to campus, complete with in-home care for Eleanor, all funded by the Price Foundation for Community Health. Clara looked at Nolan, her lips parting but unable to form words. "I'm not trying to buy you," he said gently, reading the hesitation in her eyes. "I'm just giving back what never should have been taken from you." Clara took a deep breath, her voice rough. "But if I reclaim that dream, am I exploiting your gratitude? Or worse, doing this for Lily out of obligation?" Nolan was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a crayon drawing, the lines still a little shaky but bursting with life. 3 stick figures stood in front of a building with a curved roof. Dad, Sam, Lily. Below it, in wobbly but clear letters read, "The nurse made me smile. Now I want to help her make other kids feel better." Clara felt her heart lower into her chest, not in weight, but in safety, as if it had been carefully placed somewhere it belonged. She looked back at Nolan. "I might fail. I've been away from medicine for 3 years." "I know," he nodded. "But I also know there's no one better suited to stand beside Lily. Not just as a doctor, but as the one who made her believe she's still whole enough to dream." The following weeks were a whirlwind of change. Clara moved into her new apartment, where Eleanor had her own nurse, a rehab space, and a neighbor named Lily, just 1 floor above. On her first day back in class, Clara wore her old white coat, the one she had tucked away at the back of her closet. Somehow, it still fit, as if it had never left her. She sat in the front row, taking notes with focused intensity, occasionally receiving short messages from Lily. "What's for dinner?" or I'm almost ready to say recovery for my next art piece. A year later, during a neuro-rehabilitation lecture, Clara was called out of class. Waiting for her was Dr. Redding, not to discuss coursework, but to introduce her to a group of architects and physicians preparing to open a pediatric recovery center right next to Monroe. Its name: the Lily Price Rehabilitation Center. Nolan arrived shortly after, carrying architectural plans. "We want you to be our medical director after graduation and residency. The condition: design the recovery program using the very methods that brought Lily back to the world." Clara took the blueprints, her eyes misting over. "And if I say no?" Nolan smiled. "Then I'll know I haven't done enough yet." In the pocket of her white coat, Clara kept a small copy of Lily's drawing, 3 figures standing together. They weren't a family in the traditional sense, but they had healed each other, not through miracles, but through trust, patience, and unconditional kindness. That evening, Clara received a group message from Lily, Nolan, and Eleanor. "1-year reunion tonight. Baking party. I'll bring the ice cream." Clara replied, "I'll bring fresh strawberries and a new idea for the sensory therapy room." As she looked out the window of her apartment, the lights of the Lily Price Center began to glow. Clara knew then, some dreams don't die. They simply wait for the right hands to touch them. And she had touched them, with the same hands that once trembled as they picked up the broken shards of a glass on what had seemed like an ordinary night. In the workplace, who we are when no one is watching reveals our truest self. Clara's story reminds us that kindness doesn't need to be seen to have value, but when witnessed by the right person, it can become the turning point of an entire life. If you believe that kindness is a strength, not a weakness, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, so you won't miss more stories that speak to the core of what it means to be human. And don't forget to leave a comment with the phrase "lead with heart" to help spread this message.